Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new ranking video today here on Max Talk Movies. And with the release of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse this past weekend, it's got time to stop and rank all 13 Spider-Man universe films. This is the 3 Raimi films, the 2 Andrew Garfield films, the 3 Tom Holland films, you have the 2 Venom movies, Morbius, and the 2 Spider-Verse movies. So we're going to break down all my ranking on it. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, ring the bell. I do movie reviews, TV show reviews, movie rankings, and weekly box office breakdown shows. So please subscribe, ring the bell, comment down below. What is your Spider-Man universe ranking? If you just want to rank the 10 Spider-Man movies, I'm also okay with that, but just show me both rankings. We'll have a fun discussion. I think everyone does have a firm opinion, personal opinion on their ranking, as this is such a beloved character. Also, please like the video, guys. The thumbs up button, that's how you support this channel. So without further ado, again, before I head into this ranking, I do want to say this is my favorite superhero of all time. Again, I was born in 2002 when the first film came out, so this has kind of been the superhero of my life, basically. This is a very personal ranking. I've seen really most of these movies a billion times, really the Spider-Man movies a billion times. So let's get into my ranking of the Spider-Man universe movies. So in 13th place for me, in last place is easily Morbius. This was one of the first times I really felt like offended in the movie theater by choices. Some people wanted to say it wasn't as bad as it was, but it was truly an awful viewing experience. I think this movie all the way around just had so many conflicting things going on. I feel like the director had a thing going on he wanted to do. The writers had something else they wanted to do. And then the producers. I felt like the director / writers want to do a centerpiece character study on Morbius, and letting Jared Leto kind of get into that and his bond with both Matt Smith and Adria Arjona's characters. But then also, the producers really wanted this to heavily tie in to Spider-Man stuff and just those stuff at the wall, Venom jokes. So you have no idea what universe this really takes place in. But the movie was boring. The action scenes were not very good. The CGI was not great. The villain, Matt Smith, was, I guess, interesting the first half of the movie. And then they're like, oh, he's just the villain. It's so tough with this Spider-Man Sony universe that they try to do these spin-offs with Morbius and Venom, and hopefully they don't do this with Kraven the Hunter coming out later this year. But they try to make all these villains heroes in their own movies, and then it just feels so out of place when we get to the end of the movie. And the worst 2 post-credit scenes of all time, with Michael Keaton's Vulture delivering awful lines awfully, and him having to say, oh, we're going to set the Sinister Six because you're, I guess, a bad guy. This movie I just have never liked. The comedy doesn't work. The in-jokes don't really work. Because of especially the third act, the whole fight between Morbius and Milo, it just, you can't see anything that is going on. So for me, this is easily the worst film of this franchise. Now, again, this is a very personal list. So again, if there's any hot takes, we'd love to hear hot takes or how you disagree with me in the comment section down below. But for me, my number 12 movie is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which has always been my easily least favorite Spider-Man film. And I think the biggest reason why this film just has never worked, and yes, there's a lot of things going on. Obviously, the producers and the studio infringement has really affected Andrew Garfield's films more than obviously any of the other films. And we'll obviously get to that. There's a lot going on. But for me, I think it just goes against what Spider-Man is, and that is that truly that anyone can wear the mask. And I think like the Spider-Verse movies have done a great job with that. And I think Amazing Spider-Man is kind of the complete opposite end of the spectrum, giving Peter his own parent storyline from the first 2 films, with this recapping basically that Peter's dad had his blood into the spider, which means the only person who could have, again, been by the spider and been Spider-Man is someone in that blood lineage, which I think completely goes against Peter Parker. But other than that, again, against Spider-Man, this whole movie has too much going on. You have an Electro subplot that you've seen a billion times in comic book movies, with he's a fan of the superhero, then he gets burned by the superhero, which meant him to become a big villain. You have Green Goblin, you have Rhino, you have the Gwen and Peter stuff going on, being on and off in this movie. There's just so I said they have the Peter and the parent storyline going on. There is so much going on in this movie, and it's all pretty much bad. The Rhino take by Giamatti is honestly embarrassing. Luckily, Jamie Foxx got to redeem himself as Electro in Spider-Man No Way Home. Gwen Stacy's death just feels flat because she's kind of an idiot for even she said, "Oh, I'm the smart person," and she puts herself in the most hostile situation in the third act of the movie. Just feels like they were force feeding you to get to the death. Peter and and Gwen's whole romance is easily the best part of this movie because Garfield and Emma Stone obviously have great chemistry in this film. But overall, this is just a movie that I hate to rewatch. It's easily my least favorite Hans Zimmer score. It's the electro theme just really pulls me out of the movie whenever that theme kind of kicks in. And while yes, there's some great web slinging, and this honestly could be one of the best suits we've gotten so far in live action. There's just too much going on. It's also a 2.5 hour movie, which is just way too long for this film. It's also trying to set up a Sinister Six movie. There is just so much going on. I just never have liked The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That also kind of goes with my next film on this list, number 11, which is The Amazing Spider-Man. Again, I just think Sony was desperate after the disappointing end to Sam Raimi's trilogy to pump up another Spider-Man film with a new face and kind of revamp the franchise. And I think what they wanted to do with what they did with Tom Holland's Spider-Man to really revamp the franchise is kind of what they missed here with Andrew Garfield. Again, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are terrific. Again, the best chemistry from a romance point of view than all three of the Spider-Man romances live action we've gone so far. They're fantastic in the movie together as always. But again, this movie tries so hard because again, it came out 10 years. I mean, not so long. And this film came out in 2012. Spider-Man 3 came out in 2007, just 5 years after the Raimi films. Everyone already knows Spider-Man's backstory and origin story. And this film tries to do basically the same thing, but kind of mixing up the lines, mixing up the order of events. And for me, it just felt too forced. Like, I don't think we needed another movie, again, 10 years after the original Spider-Man film in 2002, to do another, here's his origin story, he gets bit by the spider, has the Uncle Ben death. It just was not done as well. It's kind of like the minor leagues of what they did in 2002 with the Sam Raimi film. The Lizard was an interesting villain until it kind of got out of hand in the third act, where he's just trying to, out of nowhere, not just is he trying to make himself the Lizard, but he's trying to make the entire city of New York the Lizard, as he tries to infect everyone in the city, which again doesn't really make a lot of sense with his plot. This is my least favorite live action Spider-Man suit that we've gotten before. I just don't love the initial take of him in school as Peter Parker, being like the skateboardy, cool kid type thing. It just never has worked for me. So overall, not a good movie. I've never really liked this movie. And I know a lot of people love Andrew Garfield, and so do I. And you can really see that in No Way Home. But I think the movies around him just never came together. When we get to the top 10 Spider-Man movies, that's where we get to number 10, where we get to Spider-Man 3 on this list. I just don't think it's as big of a disaster as many people think. And yes, it's definitely not a good movie. But for me, it's always been watchable since I was a kid. Again, I saw this in the theaters when I remember being 5 or 6 years old, seeing the movie and dressing up as the black suit Spider-Man for Halloween that year. I definitely have nostalgia for it. And I think what works about this movie is kind of the Sandman aspect of the movie. That's fantastic. There's also 2 really fantastic action scenes with Spider-Man going up against Sandman. The one when Sandman takes over that truck and Spider-Man after the festival basically comes and helps. And then we get black suited Spider-Man versus Sandman on the train. I think those are fantastic scenes. The J. Jonah stuff is really fantastic in this movie. But again, it's kind of everything around it. Peter acts totally out of character even before he puts even before the symbiote attaches to him, where he even kisses Gwen Stacy in front of everyone, including MJ, before he gets the symbiote. Once again, we're on and off of Peter and MJ for the 3rd straight movie, which is so repetitive. The amnesia storyline with Harry for me has just never worked. I think that just really just should have made Harry the villain. Topher Grace as Venom, Eddie Brock has always been an awful decision. That just has never worked for this franchise. And this is the one film I think that hasn't held up from a CGI action point of view. The Harry versus Peter fight in the first act looks horrible from a CGI visual effects point of view. That has not held up. Even things in 2004 and 2002 have held up more than this film in 2007. Obviously, the emo Peter Parker definitely does not work. So there's definitely a lot that doesn't work in this movie. But for me, the score is still there. There's still a great bunch of characters in this film. But for me, yes, it's definitely not a good movie. I think it's the definition of average. There's a lot of great things in this movie. There's also a lot of things that are just truly awful. So I think it just meets in the middle for me. When we get to number 9, that's where we land to the first Venom movie. And this to me is a fun mess. It is a fun movie because Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock and Venom is fun to watch. And the the back and forth dialogue between Eddie and Venom is why you watch both Venom movies. They're tons of fun. Um, and I could watch them literally all day long. Now, while that's the case, I like Michelle Williams in this movie in both films as well. This has a really bad deal with Riz Ahmed as Riot, which has just never worked. They shot all of basically Venom's action scenes in the nighttime, and obviously being a black suited figure, you can't really see much that's going on towards the third act of the movie with the big action scenes. It definitely is a bit too cartoonish, but for me, it's not a film that I watch. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times. It's a fun movie, but for me, it's definitely not a good one as well. So I'm going to give Venom to number 9. And to number 8, we move to the sequel to this movie, Venom Let There Be Carnage, which I did think was a good upgrade over the first Venom. I actually really like this movie. It's a quick and fast 90 minutes of a runtime, which I really respected in the movie theater at the time. I really like Woody Harrelson as Carnage. Once again, we got way more of the Eddie and Venom dynamic going on in this movie, as they don't have to bind together. They're already together, and you get their banter even more in this movie than you did in the first film, which I really liked. The design and the action scenes revolving around Carnage were awesome. I did think that the Shriek Naomi Harris aspect of it did not work for me all the way. Also, the Detective Mulligan aspect of the movie. It seems like this movie was just promoted based off its post-credit scene, having a jaw-dropping post-credit scene, than actually making a really good movie. But still, it's a fun movie. It's a fun casual watch. It's something I forget a lot about the plot, but I can quickly move on and enjoy the action that takes place. Now, for me, the top 7 for me are good to fantastic. So this is always a very tough and divisive top 7 wherever you stand on these movies. So let's get into it. At number 7 for me is Spider-Man Far From Home, which is a movie that I loved both times I saw it in theaters. And the more I watch it, the more I do see cracks in this movie. I don't really love the plot of this film of giving a teenager who just was dusted for 5 years a highly developed technological glasses from Tony Stark and with no instructions on what to do with it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But for me, what really makes this movie, and also the Ned and the Betty Brant stuff, it got old really quick in this movie from a story point of view. It just was not that funny as the movie kept on going. But still, I still think there's a lot of great stuff in here, of course. I think it's a really good movie. Gyllenhaal as Mysterio is perfect casting. Who would have thought you got Mysterio this good on the big screen before? That's really because of how dynamic of an actor Jake Gyllenhaal is. And they do really, if you've never heard of Mysterio, they really do buy you in that Mysterio is from the multiverse. He's just trying to help out Spider-Man. That twist does work for people who does not know the comics that well. You also Mysterio illusion sequences are awesome in this movie. They're so comic book come to life. The Mysterio illusion sequences that I just really adore in this movie. 2 awesome post-credit scenes setting up Secret Invasion, but also setting up No Way Home with Mysterio revealing Peter is Spider-Man to the world. I think this is a much better version of MJ that we got in Homecoming, and you can really see the chemistry truly there between Tom Holland and Zendaya that comes through the screen. And also just the lasting effects of Iron Man really does loom over this movie, which is why I have Spider-Man No Far From Home at number 7. Now, number 5 and number 6 to me was the hardest decision to make on this list, because for years I've had this movie above this film, but now I've switched this list in the coming days since kind of reflecting on both movies. So number 6, again, I love now the rest of this list. All 6 films I just love. At number 6, I have Spider-Man Homecoming. I love this movie mostly because of Michael Keaton as the Vulture. It's easily the one of, if not the best Spider-Man villain that we've gotten so far. Him just being a scavenger of the Avengers parts at the end of the first Avengers movie, literally like a vulture does. I just adored that in the scene with Peter, Liz, and Adrian Toomes in the car leading up to the dance is one of the best scenes ever in a Spider-Man movie as it pertains to tension, Both of them knowing who each other are, but playing it very coy, is obviously they don't want Liz to know. It's an excellent scene. It's a great revamp. Again, Tom Holland actually looking like he's in high school and being around a lot of kids who generally look like they're in high school was much needed, as they definitely casted well older actors to play the Spider-Man in the first two Peter Parkers that we got. Tom Holland still for me is the perfect Spider-Man as you get to the age, the way he acts, the physicalness of the character. And you can see that him and Ned are a great dynamic. What holds us back for me is that sometimes the MCU-ness of this movie does overbear it from being a true Spider-Man movie. It does feel like more of an MCU film than it does a Spider-Man film. There's a lot going on. Tony is great in the movie, but there's all this, the Avengers stuff is moving, and all of these things. So for me, it gets too much MCU for me to make it a true top 5 Spider-Man film. But still, I love this film. I watch it all the time. This is such a tough list to make. Now we get to number 5. Number 5 for me is Spider-Man 2. Now, for a lot of people, this is everyone's favorite Spider-Man film of all time, one of their favorite comic book movies of all time, which I can understand. Again, I can completely understand. But for me, Spider-Man 2 is a fantastic movie. It has some of the most special Spider-Man moments in it. You have one of the best comic book movie fights of all time with this fight with Doc Ock on the train, which is special every single time. And I think what makes this movie great is that Peter Parker gets beat up just as much as Spider-Man does. Now, the biggest thing that does hold this movie back for me from getting into maybe my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time is the whole thing of Peter losing his powers due to his life situation. It's never been a storyline that I've been that interested in. And those sequences are fine, but it's a big plot line in the movie that does not click with me. Once he becomes Spider-Man, the train sequence happens. The rest of the movie is gold. That kind of middle section where he loses his powers, I'm just never a huge fan of. But other than that, this is a fantastic origin story, again, with Doc Ock being an awesome villain in this movie. Played by Alfred Molina, does a great job. The fact that Spider-Man is just a big loser in this movie. Peter Parker is just as a big loser, and he gets beat up more than actually Spider-Man does, which I've always been a big fan of. So overall, I love this movie. I wish they could have done a better job with the plotline of him losing his powers. But other than that, it's a top tier Spider-Man film. At number 4 for me is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was other than No Way Home, which I'll get into, this is one of my favorite movie theater experiences of all time. Going into a movie with zero expectations and just being taken away with a special film. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a near perfect film, with Miles Morales as the perfect lead character for this movie. The animation is breakthrough, revolutionary, all of those things, but also has a great key plot line, especially when you get to the relationship with Miles and Peter B. Parker. All the Spider people. I mean, I love Spider-Man Noir, played by Nicolas Cage. Can't wait to see him back, hopefully for Beyond the Spider-Verse. It just gives you a great way, again, of anyone can wear the mask. I think this movie exemplifies that the best, with all of these different versions of Peter Parker. The Prowler voice on Mahershala Ali is always great. The Uncle Aaron Miles relationship is easily one of the best relationships we've gotten in any Spider-Man film. The music and the soundtrack is easily the best we've gotten in any other Spider-Man film. I just adore this movie from start to finish. Again, you're not going to hear any complaints now going forward with these movies from 4 to 1. So overall, it's a fantastic film. Great emotions, a great origin story. Movie I've seen a billion times, and I will continue to watch a billion times. So that's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And number 3 is a movie that just came out this past weekend. That is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I do think is a slight improvement over the first one, which was really tough to do. This is a near perfect film. Other than the runtime for me, this is a fantastic film. It's the most jaw-dropping animation film I've ever seen on the big screen before. The amount of animation styles that are used for each Spider people, and even the Spider universes are awesome, especially Gwen's universe. That's always really cool. I am going to talk slight spoilers though about this movie, because I do think it does set up Beyond the Spider-Verse perfectly, with Miles being stuck with the Prowler Miles and Uncle Aaron towards the end of the film, and having Gwen lead the team. And the other thing I just loved about this movie was Gwen being really the co-lead in this movie, having her origin story with her father, and that really setting up her friendship with Miles throughout the entire film. Miguel O'Hara is a threatening antagonist, which I'm very excited to see if he's lying about anything that he said in this movie or he's actually telling the truth. The Spot went from villain of the week to being, honestly, I think he could be one of the best Spider-Man villains that we've gotten in this entire run. Voiced by Jason Schwartzman. Dina Kaluuya as Spider-Punk, one of the coolest characters we've gotten in a Spider-Man film before. It was revolutionary. It was diverse without having to feel force-fed in that type of way. It was just a beautiful film that I cannot wait to rewatch multiple times. At number 2 for me is Spider-Man 2002. And this is one of the films that got me into movies, that got me into comic book films and comics themselves. It's my favorite superhero origin story to ever grace the big screen before. Yes, is Tobey Maguire older than he should be to play this role? Of course he is. Are the kids definitely do not look like high schoolers? They don't, but this is how you do the Spider-Man origin story, right? The Uncle Ben stuff really worked for this movie. Him turning into Spider-Man works. I do love the idea. I know it's not in the comics, but him not having to make the webs, but them being inside of him. And of course, the Spider-Man doesn't give you all those things. It also gives him the webs. It's my favorite Spider-Man suit. It's my favorite Spider-Man swinging. It's my favorite Spider-Man villain as it comes to Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. My favorite scene in the whole movie is just the mirror scene between Norman and the Green Goblin. Now, even Norman, an awful human being, can be afraid of this alternate personality. It's a genius performance. The whole suit does not take me out of the film. And I also love about this movie is that it's not just an origin story for Spider-Man, it's an origin story for the Green Goblin. And they give each character so much screen time that you do care about them meeting up later in the film. Even Norman favoring him over Harry is a lot of great stuff as well. The famous kiss scene with Mary Jane. You have the casting of J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. There's so much special things that happen in this movie. And I have really no other nostalgia for any other film other than this film. I have so much nostalgia. It's definitely of its time. It's definitely cheesy, but I think like me, if you grow up with this movie, you have some nostalgia bias. And I just think I said all the plots, but I just have so much nostalgia. It takes me back to being a little kid, watch this film for the first time. I just adore this character because really of this movie. But we get into my number 1 movie for Spider-Man, and that is, for me, Spider-Man No Way Home, which was a terrific, my favorite movie theater experience of all time. Yes, it's filled with tons of fan service with all the people coming back, but I think the story itself truly works. I get really emotional every time the scene of the 3 Spider-Man talking about how they are connected, especially the Uncle Ben aspect. It gets me every time. It's my favorite Spider-Man scene of all time. You just would never think you would see Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield as these characters on the big screen ever. And to see it work, not just for the fan service of it, but actually fitting into the story and them making sense, and him and those Spider-Man being important to our Spider-Man, Tom Holland's trilogy of an origin story. It's a great origin story, which I think really reaps its benefits in this movie with Aunt May's death and the emotion of the sacrifice elements of this movie. I'm trying to save all the villains, even though they were obviously villains. Willem Dafoe is just as excellent as he was in 2002. Getting to see Alfred Molina back, Jamie Foxx, who gets a huge improvement from Electro, from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sandman, a Lizard. Seeing them all fight these 3 Spider-Man was great. And I do love the Spider-Man MJ relationship in this movie. It's just a fantastic relationship. The fact that Peter has to give up his name so everyone forgets who he is, and seeing him and MJ and him not actually telling her that, who he is and all these things was really special to me. Him then making his own suit and living in the apartment. I think we're finally ready to see the true Spider-Man for Tom Holland moving forward. For me, this is the most special film I've ever seen in a theater before. Me feeling like it's like the Super Bowl. And it was for me as such a huge Spider-Man fan. For me, Spider-Man No Way Home comes in at number 1. So that's my Spider-Man movies ranking. What's your ranking in the comment section down below? What do you disagree with my ranking? If so, go into your thoughts. Why do you think one movie is better than the other? Let me know in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe. I'll see you guys soon.